Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today on this panel for social safeguards. I think we're going to get started. I'm sure people will start trickling in after this coffee break that was just happening now. But really appreciate your time and joining this really interesting panel with these experts. I know it's the end of the day, so just appreciate your participation. So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about social safeguards, and we have three experts here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we're going to start with a round of questions. So starting with Reynaldo.
Thank you, Abbey. Well, I have been around landfill projects for 15 years now, 15 plus. Since 2009, I started working in the construction, operation, in the project developer side. And then monitoring, verification. So I mean, in those days, we were working under CDM. We verified about 600,000 CERs. And from 2020 and until today, I have been I co-found a consultancy working more oriented with climate action reserve. So right now we are doing consultancy for Mexican projects. Mostly for verification. Right now we have, I would say, 350,000 CRTs verified in Mexico. And also we're doing the feasibility analysis, design phase, working with our clients, investors and project developers to expand and scale the scope of landfill gas projects, which is very, very, very small. Only three projects in a big country. Is something that we are trying to change and trying to scale up. Thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you. Paulina?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Paulina Fernández. I am LATAM manager of TÜV South America. We are a validation and verification body. I manage all my team in the forestry sector, and we cover so many countries around Latin America, as Brazil, Colombia, of course, Mexico, and that also those are the main countries that we'll be talking about today. So, yeah, nice to meet you.
Thank you. And Enrique?
Thank you very much, Abbey. Thank you, everybody. Well, my name is Enrique Espinosa, and I am the founder of BoOl, that with my colleague Hernandez, I am a lawyer by vocation, but a forestry by vocation. Sorry, I am a lawyer by education and a forestry by vocation. I'm sorry about the mistake. But really what we do is try to enhance projects in the forestry side of Mexico, basic on the community part of IFM projects. My background has always been through the timber, and I say it proudly that 15 years ago, I moved back from the board backwards to the trees. So I am very excited to be with you, and I hope that we can share this very interesting topic about the social safeguards, because I really believe is the correct reason that we are doing these projects.
Perfect, thank you so much. And also just to quickly introduce myself, I'll be moderating this session today. My name is Abbey Garcia. I work for the Climate Action Reserve, and I've been with the Reserve for about 4.5 years now. And my experience is specifically with the Mexico Forest Protocol. And this is one of our protocols where social safeguards is really super important part of the protocol. The majority of our projects in Mexico are communal or ejido-based projects, which means it's not just one person being impacted by this, each project. It's really sometimes 100, 1,000, or even tens of thousands of people impacted by each project. So making sure that social safeguards are implemented and correctly implemented in these projects is really important for long-term longevity of the projects, making sure that there's benefit sharing within the community members, that there's participation, and that really each community member can take away something positive from a carbon project. So I have some questions from our panelists today. I think we have three very interesting perspectives. I know landfill projects, forest projects are going to have different aspects of social safeguards will look differently in each of these types of projects. So my first question is for Paulina. And so Paulina, I would like to ask, from a verification body perspective, why are social safeguards critical to the long-term viability of a carbon project? And how do verification teams assess whether social safeguards are effectively implemented?
Yeah, thank you, Abbey. And again, it's a pleasure to be part of this panel today, and good afternoon, everyone. From a verification perspective, social safeguards are not an add-on. They are a structural condition for project permanence and credibility. And also in our work, we constantly see that projects with weak social safeguards face higher risks regardless of how strong carbon accounting looks on paper. And that is why the role of independent verification is critical, to assess not only whether safeguards are well documented, but whether they are actually working for the communities involved. And here I would like to make 4 quick points from a verifier perspective and to explain a little bit more. The first one is about social safeguards and risk management. As I mentioned before, projects with weak social safeguards face higher risk of conflict, reversals, delays, or even cancellations. In practice, strong safeguards reduce permanent risk and protect the long-term value of the project. As a second point, also, I would like to talk about the standards. And yeah, the standards matter, but implementation matters more. The standards have clearly raised the bar, but the real impact depends on how safeguards are implemented and evidence on the ground. And as BBB, our role is not compliance or is not assess only the compliance on paper, but whether safeguards are functioning in reality. And as number 3, also to talk about the effectiveness, I have to say that verification goes beyond document review. It includes triangulating evidence of project documentation, interviews during the site visit with the community members, and also observations that we raised during the site visit. So at the end, if the communities do not understand the project, its benefits, or the grievance mechanism that has the project set up, that is evidence in itself. And another point I would like to add from our verification experience is that the social safeguards should not be treated as a one-time requirement, because in reality, they are an evolving component of the project. We often see projects where at early stages, community engagement is limited or uneven, but over consecutive verification periods, gaps can be identified, can be corrected, and gradually improved. And that, from a verification perspective, that evolution really matters, because it allows safeguards to move from formal compliance to actual community ownership of the project. So trying to wrapping up here my first participation. So yeah, from our perspective, verification is not about validating a narrative. It is about testing whether safeguards function over time under real conditions and for all community members, including those who are less visible.
Thank you so much. I really loved what you said about social safeguards not being an add-on. I think they're an integral part of a carbon project. It's not just something that is later reported for a better rating of the project. I think it's something that needs to be implemented from the start, and also, as you mentioned, something that grows year after year, because it's not a one-time project, especially if we want to make sure that these projects are lasting a really long time. I think that social safeguards and implementing social safeguards over years and years and years is one of the most important things that we can make sure that each project is doing. So, Paulina, I think you talked a lot about the verification component, and I know your team has a lot of experience in the forestry sector. But Reynaldo, I'm really interested also hearing more about landfill. You know, landfill gas projects are often seen as a win-win for climate mitigation. But what are some key social risks that can be overlooked in landfill projects, and how do they differ from something that we're more commonly used to hearing in AFOLU or forestry or nature-based solution projects?
Yeah, thank you, Abbey. I identified 4 key social risks in landfill gas. The first one is the health and safety of the communities, because landfill gas migrates underground, but also migrates through the air. And let's remember that landfill gas is almost as heavy, as dense as air. So it does not immediately disperse in the air. It can travel significant distances before getting up to the atmosphere. So this represents an important threat or hazard to the nearby communities. So that's a very critical issue. Number 2 is labor rights and working conditions, because landfill environments are hazardous. We have toxic gases such as methane that inside the human body can displace oxygen, causing asphyxiation. We have hydrogen sulfide, which is very, very, very dangerous. And even in low concentrations, if you are exposed long enough or the concentrations are high enough, you can even die immediately. So it's a very serious concern. And I'm talking about landfills that had maybe industrial or commercial waste coming inside. We have measured actual readings of ppms about 800. So 800 to 1,000 is instant death. I mean, we're in a landfill, there's some air in it, but still it's a very high risky condition, right? And on top of that, we have explosive risk, because methane is an explosive gas. We have traffic, heavy equipment, accidents because of the movement of vehicles. And number 3, I will continue in the risk list. Number 3 is benefit sharing, which even if it is a both municipal land-owned or private land-owned, benefit sharing is always a sensitive matter, which needs to be, and it's usually done this way, but it's something to put a special attention on. The benefit sharing should be in clauses within the contract to describe how the percentage and the royalties and so on. So that's usually covered, but very important to not overlook it. And number 4, last but not least, certainly, is gender equity. Gender equity understood as the specific conditions, so we can achieve gender equality. And because landfills are usually in remote areas, women, I mean not only women, but especially women, traveling by unpaved roads, isolated roads, through the night, it's a security concern, a real security concern. And then on-site, access to clean water, access to sanitation facilities, proper security is not always guaranteed. So this may sound like obvious things, but many of landfills still lack of basic infrastructure. I'm not talking about Mexico, but maybe it's the same scenario in other countries. But many landfills lack of this basic infrastructure, and we need to address those risks before thinking about gender equity. So if you don't have those things covered, which again seems obvious, but they are not, you have a high risk of not complying with that safeguard. This sounds very grim, but the bright side of the story is that carbon projects, landfill gas projects that are claiming credits, such as we have here at Metano Zero, which is a very good example in Mexico, very veteran project. Since by the standards and protocols, they're required to comply with the law, but now with the social safeguards, and now with the carbon credit rating, so they kind of force, and not only force, but incentivize to address all these risks, and those negative impacts that I just mentioned, they're turn it into positive outcomes. So that's a very good. Those are very good news. But unfortunately, as I was telling earlier, we only have 3 projects in Mexico. So we want to scale this so the negative scenario that we have in many other landfills, we can turn the page and bring it into top tier, top notch, very high standard operations, so social safeguards can be addressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, with 3 projects, I think, as you mentioned, there's more opportunity there for the landfill sector to grow, and those impacts have, social impacts on the surrounding communities, which eventually could have a huge impact on Mexico overall. So
yeah,
so
I mean, I only have 5 minutes, but I can go on the list, because then you have like the workers. That's a very. If I had one additional minute, the workers that are hired by the projects, they're very well paid, because you usually have the landfill in the middle of nowhere where working opportunities are not that accessible. So you need to pay well to the people to be willing to go to work to the landfill, and they end up working for years in a company because they pay them well, they have good working conditions. So the level of life increases for these people. So it may be a staff of 10, 15, even 20 people that they just live better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Correct.
Amazing. No, thank you so much for that, for those insights. And I think we've heard from the verification point of view, from the landfill point of view, and I'm interested to also look towards the development, but also the market, So, Enrique, can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the market? What social benefits really matter to buyers? And what makes one project stand out from another in terms of strong safeguards? And then, in terms of pricing, how does this affect the price of a credit after seeing the social safeguards implemented?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Abbey. Thank you, everybody. Well, I would like to turn back and be very conscious on why we are here. Because I think that, and I was talking to someone here, that this is why we are doing these projects. And let me tell you a little bit of my background. I am in the forestry sector, and I was for many years in private land producing a lot of timber, and that was great. It was a good business. And of course, the people can be continuously better. But when we found that Mexico is this great opportunity about the communities, is the first country in the world that has this opportunity in IFM and IRR projects, that has a lot to be said about the opportunities they have of the safeguards, that they are in the law, they are in the carbon projects, but more than that is what we really believe that these kind of projects can bring out. So when we decided to build the projects, we always ask the same question. What would you do personally? What's the most important thing? Is transparency? Is equal gender? Is just benefit sharing correct? So I always say, when the buyers, and they are increasingly saying what they need and what they want to absorb, I always say, what could you like to act in your own family, in your own country? And this is why I think that these safeguards that I really appreciate that the protocol sets a standard, a minimum level, but I think that it is what is going to have to be growing in our communities. I am very proud to say that at some point when we designed our projects, we designed something that we call a shared bag. It's a shared bag that it's the money that we put in different productive and social projects. Because for right now, I think that these kind of opportunities is what brings to the people the other complements that are needed from a measurement and a standard way. So today we can see people that they are not only asking how are the giratarios or the project, they are seeing all the community. How's the garbage? How is the people getting educated? How are you keeping your young people here? So these are so many things that we can do with a simple thinking of this is what is meant to be done in Mexico.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think from these three initial comments, we've seen why social safeguards are so important. But I know it's not always black and white. And so I think leading into the next question, Paulina, I'd like to ask you, what are the challenges? What are the challenges that you see in verifying the implementation and effectiveness of these social safeguards? And to what extent does project documentation accurately reflect the lives of the indigenous communities? Because you can see one thing, we could read it on a report, but I don't know if that's necessarily always exactly how it's reflected in real life.
Yeah. Thanks, Abby. I think this is a crucial point. because in social safeguards, the question is not if something exists, but it is if it is effective and accessible in real conditions. And yeah, one of the biggest challenges is the gap between documentation and lived reality. And the reasons behind that gap are very specific. Again, I will highlight 4 challenges we frequently face during verification service. And the number one most important is the nature of the evidence. Most of the time, social safeguards are often well described in the paper, in the project documentation, in the project description, but they are harder to demonstrate. Why? Because documentation always shows or captures the processes, the meetings, the notice, the plans, but not necessarily whether safeguards are understood, trusted, or effective from a community perspective. And also, depending on the program, verification can become mainly focused on document correspondence, while the quality of participation or decision influence remains harder to evidence. And the second point, also talking a little bit more about indigenous communities, is the free, prior, and informed consent, because this is a special challenging from everyone, including us. The FPIC may formally exist, but not always in a meaningful or deliberative way. Verifying FPIC requires culturally appropriate engagement, language sensitivity, and independent conversations, often beyond what documentation alone can show. And number 3, it's about the participation, and I will say that participation is not always representative. We see that women, non-land holding members, or non-Spanish speakers groups are frequently underrepresented in consultations. And the thing is that if these voices are not heard, safeguards are incomplete. And this is why also verification must include deliberate sampling and confidential interviews, not only engagement with visible leadership. And number 4 is the real-world conditions that shape verification and also show us that sometimes the reality that we observe is not the same, or we can also have some difference on that between what is in the paper. So physical access, language barriers, again, cultural norms, and trust all influence what communities can safely share and also share with us during the interviews. For example, the grievance mechanism may also exist on paper, but accessibility depends on awareness, language, trust, and perceived safety, particularly in indigenous context. And also that is very important because once we understand the broader political and the legal context that can be critical for the project, especially where there are known disputes or historical rights-related concerns. And all of these 4 challenges mean that documentation by itself can never fully capture lived realities. I will say that documentation, it is a necessary starting point, and it is, because we need to review the document, the project's documents before going to a site visit and prepare our sampling analysis. But often it is insufficient on its own. Documents may show that the steps were taken, but the effectiveness depends on whether communities understand the project and their rights, can access to grievance mechanism, and also experience that benefit sharing in a transparent and fair way. And also that brings me to the verifier responsibility as BBV. It's to surface between those discrepancies, and even in some cases when they are uncomfortable, and also require those corrective actions before a service can be concluded successfully. So if the project has not ensured that the community understands the project, that is a finding. And also if grievance mechanisms are not accessible, that is a not compliance. At the end, what we are trying to keep on this social assessment is that the social safeguards must be verified with the same rigor as carbon accounting errors, not as a secondary issues. And yeah, stepping back for a moment also as a wrapping up, as a verification body in TÜBSÜD, one area we continue strengthening, it's how we assess social safeguards. Because we know that it is an improvement area for everyone, not only for the communities or for project developers or for standards, it's for everyone. So yeah, particularly in an audit planning, we are improving. We are also trying to add more team competencies and evidence expectations. So yeah, at the end, the objective is not to raise the bar arbitrarily, but to make social safeguard assessments more consistent and context-aware, and also align with evidence that demonstrate real effectiveness on the ground.
Thank you, Paulina. No, I like what you said about verifier responsibility, because as you mentioned, the project documentation it's not always sufficient enough to really show the realities. So taking that step to go above and beyond, I think, is super important to make sure social safeguards are really implemented and effectively implemented. So, Reynaldo, I'd like to ask you about the future. I'd like to see, how do you see social safeguards evolving in landfill carbon projects in the next few years, looking maybe 5, 10, 15 years into the future? What do you see changing there?
It is becoming evident that both investors and project developers are now elevating the importance of social safeguards. It is very clear now on all the project cycle, so from the feasibility analysis, design, implementation, and operation. This is actually that's something that we are doing right now for new projects. We're analyzing with site owners, implementing new projects. So we're considering all those risk assessment matters into this design, because then if you don't have that budget, that capex considered from the beginning, then it will be a challenge because of financial constraints, and that will be a battle with the CFO, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a very important thing to consider right now before implementing the project. That's the first point. From the buyer's perspective, social safeguards are no longer a nice to have; they are required now. So they're not looking only for carbon reductions, but also on how the project perform on the field. So that it is a signal of both the credit quality and the project integrity. So very important to take that into account from the beginning. Looking ahead, I see this trend only strengthening, because both investors, buyers, everyone is aligning toward the same goals, same social performance. So projects that integrate this into their business model will be better positioned to keep their credit demand and price stable. So very important for the financial survivability of the project. To finalize, I was I just noticed that I didn't answer your past question about the difference between nature and nature-based and landfill gas projects. So I will take a couple of minutes. You asked me about the difference. I see that landfill gas projects focus on mitigating negative projects, while nature-based projects tend to focus on enhancing and multiplying the benefits that the ecosystem are already providing to the community and to the environment. So from my point of view, going back to the topic, is that since the baseline for landfill gas projects is more critical because of the risk that I just mentioned before, to consider the social risk is even more important, I believe. So those negative impacts can be mitigated. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you so much. And finally, Enrique, I'd like to ask about increasing market standards and requirements. You know, I think in the last couple of years, social safeguards, although I think they've always been important, they've become increasingly more spoken about, I think both internationally, between standards, between buyers, market actors. So I want to ask from LABoOl's point of view, how are you adapting project design to deliver stronger social safeguards and stronger social outcomes in each and every project?
Yeah, thank you very much, Abby. And yes, I agree also with Reynaldo that social safeguards they are supposed to be granted. No, everybody expects that they are always there. What's the next step? How we can manage to do this accountability of these safeguards that really work for what they are doing. It's not only having a good methodology of how the people can make their claims. It's not only that, it's how we can implement that in a very conscious way. How is that we are going to, if we are asking for transparency, how we are going to do that in a very serious way, and this can bring the projects to be a better project. I think that I always ask some of the people that are partnering with us, because they are not buyers. They also have their own thoughts on what these kind of safeguards they want to protect more. Of course, everybody wants to do the best for the children, the best for the woman or the people or indigenous people, of course. But there are certain things that some companies and some people that partner with the projects like more. So we are very focused on learning they are not their appetite, but their privileges, so that we can work with them and work with the community. There are many communities in our forestry rounds that they have different abilities, and we want to share that, how they have protected the forest or how they are taking care of the water. So, for example, in one project of the peninsula of Yucatan, we are working with garbage. Those garbage think that this is important. Well, for the partner, it's very important because we are in an area where the people are not taking care of that, and this pollution goes directly to the water. No? So those kind of things, but how we can measure, how we can prove it, how can we make them really a daily activity, not because we have to, not because you are going to be paid, because it's good of that. It's good for the people, it's good for the nature. And you know, one of the most important things I would like to share is how we have been learning about how our children in the community see this. And this has been amazing. How we have, with a little bit of going to the schools, teaching about protecting fire, how to treat the forest, is working really on the adults on the forestry side. So I think that this is, for me and for the people that work in LATAM, this is the kind of reason why we are doing the projects. So if we are part of that, I think that we can share that with our partners that are the buyers.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And just, I'm curious, what about different parts of the country? What kind of, I think every community is different. So,
Yeah.
What are these differences culturally, regionally? How are social safeguards implemented, and how do you take that into account if you have a project maybe in the north of the country where it might be very different from what you see in the south of the country? What kind of differences, what kind of social impacts are seen there?
Well, they are huge. Mexico is a very different country. For example, in the peninsula of Yucatan, we have, as part of our team, we have people that speak Maya, and this is, is not a written language. So we have people that are speaking language, they're speaking Maya, and we try to support. Even we opened, and it wasn't very successful, but I know it will be in the future. Maya, what's up? And they were asking, because it's very difficult for them to communicate in a written way. So we opened that line. It didn't work at all, because we were in this part of the project that there were questions more about contract. But I know that in the future we will make it work. And in another part of the country, for example, I really appreciate the way they see the long term of the nature, birds, how they protect the side view of these areas that they are difficult. So what we are trying to do is always taking that in consideration. Now, of course, the people are the ones that are doing the projects, no? And I always say something that at some point I am criticized, no? But I think that one of the responsibility of the developers is that the communities take over our activities. If they fire us, is that we have done a correct job. So I hope really that the young people can stay there. Right now, I'm very happy that 2 young people are now the accounting for many of the ejidos, for example, people that are staying there. So I'm really excited that to see these people getting involved and understanding more about what we can change the lives of the people living there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, thanks. And I really like going back to Paulina's point earlier about project documentation and then going into Enrique, what you said about these community benefits. I think it's really important to also, me personally, I work with Mexico Forestry projects, but I don't always get the chance to go to every project, see the real impact. And so I think it's so important that we are, buyers in the market, really taking the advantage of speaking with the community members. I think here at NACW is a great opportunity. There's a lot of community members here who can firsthand tell you about the experience that they've had in their project and social safeguards. And hearing that perspective, I think, is really more important than any kind of project documentation that we might be able to find on a registry or any other place. And so I'd like to go back and just ask for final reflections. Reynaldo, can you give us your final reflections going forward in the future for landfills, for social safeguards? What should we take away from this?
Yeah, well, I was pleased to be in the last panel called landfills, not just waste. They were remarking, it was a little bit funny, but they were saying that like landfill projects are becoming more sexy, right now, because of the traditional opinion of being like just steel pipings, not very focused on the people, right? But they were raising the facts that the community impact, the workers. So the list started growing larger and larger, longer and longer, and so then the people start realizing, yeah, well, the social impacts of a landfill are huge, both negative and positives, right? So I believe it's not that. I mean, I'm a landfill gas advocate, but it's not like this is better than this one. It's just like understanding more deeply what is going on in each of the sectors, the importance of each sector, what does each sector bring to the table in terms of global warming, social risk assessment, and so. So I'm happy to hear that there's more awareness on this, on landfill gas. And I believe it's our job to communicate what is going on. We will also talking about social media and that waste companies are also filming like what's going on, so people understand not only landfills but the garbage truck, the garbage man, what's going on with the waste. So then people start realizing, oh yeah, that's the whole cycle. This is the impact. We are all into this. And yeah, I just want to finish with that. I'm very happy how the things are going, but not so happy because we need to bring more projects online, right?
Oh, I agree.
I mean, happy for the opportunity to bring more projects online.
We hope so. We hope in the next few years we'll see a growth in the landfill sector.
Yeah.
Now, Paulina, I know your team has experience in different sectors, in forestry sectors, and in landfills, and verification of different standards. What's your final takeaway about social safeguards? Why are they so important, and what can we do to make sure that they're strong and they're effective?
Yeah, I think I also retake a comment that I heard from the panel of yesterday about durability. I think it was Lauren that said that it is not about like the risk that the project has itself, because the risk will always exist, but it is about the mitigation activities and the mitigation implementation things that will reduce that risk and that will be make stronger the project. And I think that the same case that happens with social safeguards. It is not about finding or raising a finding about what was wrong about the social safeguards implementation or a stakeholder consultation. It is about the mitigations that are going to be in place for the project, for all the life of the project, and how those measures will be taken by the community, because at the end, the community members are the ones who will be working and are the ones who are living there, and how those mechanisms are going to be set up by the lifetime of the project. I think that is one of the crucial points that needs to be taken since the beginning, since the implementation of a project.
Exactly. A lot of these projects, most projects are not just 1 year, or not just 2 years, but maybe 30, 100 years into the future. Exactly. And I think so it's very important to implement these practices from the start. Otherwise, there's no chance that the project will make it that long. So, Enrique, what about you? What's final takeaways about social impact, the importance in project design, project implementation, and then from the market perspective?
Correct. Well, I really appreciate the comments of Reynaldo and Paulina. I think that they are very accurate in their field, and I totally agree. But I would like to say that for me, what's the important part here is when you do a project, what's the question we should take as a developer in these very important social safeguards? I think that the sky is the limit. I think that we have to believe that the question is, how could I treat my family the same way? How can I treat our people the same way? So I think that although it's a great process to have this in implementation, written, verified, everything, I think as developers, we have to think more. What's our main goal to do these things for the future? I truly believe that we have this great opportunity because we are getting paid to try to do it better. So the sky is the limit, and that will be my takeaway.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that, requirements are the bare minimum. I think that there's always something more that can be done to make sure that there's long-term longevity, there's social benefits, and that they're really going above and beyond what any kind of, not just a registry, a protocol, international requirements. I think that there's always one step further that you can go.
It's a good base.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good base.
It's a good base
to begin. So
exactly.
let's think big. No, I think that most of the time, and Mexico has a great opportunity there. And I think that the protocol, the Mexico Forest Protocol, has done a great job establishing the base rule. But we can go farther. We can go much better. And believe me that it is possible. It is really possible.
Exactly. Now, I'd like to leave a few minutes and ask if there's any questions from the audience for our three expert panelists. Yeah?
I guess this is a question for Reynaldo. You mentioned labor rights and hazards in the workplace. How do you go about addressing that, in a plan? What would you do to address specifically those kind of workplace issues that might come up in a landfill?
Well, the law requires how you call it, a civil protection, some kind of an emergency plan and hazardous plan that is required by law. Right. So that's the most basic thing. Usually, you need also assessment of the firefighter department because you have explosives. So there are norms, standards that you need to comply with because you are treating with explosive gas. That's from the basic thing, and then there you start having for instance, if you have enclosed spaces like offices or a room or a ditch or whatever is considered enclosed. You need to have proper ventilation. There are also standards to, for instance, you have an enclosed I would say like a room, you need to have like certain recycling rate of the air. So there are norms for that to design the ventilators, the fans, and so. So depending on how complex the project is the norms you need to follow. But those are like the basic things: the fire thing, the enclosed, because the asphyxiation. From there, I would say signaling, like fire extinguishers. So everything that is around fire is very important. Signaling due to the traffic, it needs to be addressed. So that, there's always a budget for that. And then during the design phase, where the signals, where the extinguishers, where the office, the ventilation, the distances from the power grid, for instance, that you need to leave some space. If you have electric generation, power generators, that's a different monster, right? But yeah, there's standards, there are norms, sometimes national norms. If there's none, you just take international norms to design your project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I came in late.
Thank you. So I have a question on the perspective of a private property. How do the social safeguards play a role? Like, is it seen as an add-on, even if it's not on the Mexican protocol, to include the social safeguards? Should it be included, or is it like an unwritten rule that should be considered? Because it's like an essential part of the private project, but it's not there. And maybe from a rating perspective, it's not going to be well evaluated because it doesn't have this social safeguard. So is it like an add-on then?
This question for me.
I don't know. I think yes.
Sure, I can start. No, I think from the reserve's point of view, I think the social safeguards are very important. We started the Mexico Forest Protocol specifically requiring social safeguards for communal and ejido projects because I think there are so many people involved in one project, so many people affected by one project, that it's of the utmost importance to make sure that there's participation, that there's decision from the community, as Paulina mentioned, free, prior, informed consent. There's a strong governance of the community, since the decisions are not just made by one person, they're made by many different people. And so that was always part of the protocol for communal and ejido-based projects, and those are today the number one project type that we have. However, for individual projects or a private property project where there might be one landowner, we are considering in the next version of the protocol to also require social safeguards for all property types. We have a Panama and Guatemala protocol that already requires social safeguards for those types of properties, and it might look a little bit different from the requirements that are for communal and ejido projects, just because governance is different. But I still think it's really important that those social safeguards are implemented. They might be working with a project developer, they have a contract, so sale of credits, making sure that the information is given to the property owner, making sure that they're giving their consent and involved in all of the process of the project, because as we mentioned before, these are long-term projects. I think it's really important, even if it's a smaller group of people involved in the project, to make sure that they're also being benefited socially by these projects. So not just an add-on, but really something that would be important for every single project. Just to mention, I believe that in the version 3.1 of the Mexico Forest Protocol, that will be already something implemented.
And to complement on that, Abby, I think from a verification perspective, again, it should be an add-on in every project, because it's not about if the community owns the land, but also it's about the communities that are around the land, mm-hmm. and will be affected, because that net positive that the project will have, maybe that will be displaced by them. And instead of having the good that they were having from the land, they will be having to be 10 kilometers far away from the initial place where they were taking that benefit, right? So at the end, every protocol or every standard has their own rules, but also we always said that it has to be an add-on in every project. It doesn't matter if it is private land, because also in the private land exist workers. So there are internal workers that are considered as internal communities inside the private land. So we need to take and make sure that also the rights of the workers that are there and all the different social safeguards that every methodology or every protocol has are in place. So yeah, it does not matter if that has a forest or non-forest project, but it should be on.
Mm-hmm. Question in the back?
Yeah, thank you. So I really appreciated that what I heard of this session. I wanted to pick up on, I guess it started with Enrique, but it continued this theme of understanding as fully as we can what communities are looking for. And so I worked for about 10 years at USAID, and so we've always worried about the power dynamics within communities. So, if you have a whole community meeting, are there some people, they're just not going to speak up, so you need to maybe have separate meetings with youth, or separate meetings with women, or separate meetings. So I'm just wondering what you have observed in the context of the exploration about community needs in the context of carbon projects, about how deeply do you see project developers and other affiliated partners exploring that fully, and how much are you satisfied with the kinds of understanding that maybe the answer is USA, you're worrying about it too much. Those power dynamics, I'm completely open to whatever observations you have about this.
Yeah. Can I answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I think it's a great question. And let me tell you only on our experience right now. We have been developing projects for almost 4 years. We have, I think, very, very successful with several emissions and through the time. And I can tell you right now that the next, all the next people that are going to be the joining the company are sociologists. Those are the people that are coming to live in the communities. I think that right now it's what it's more needed. People that are understanding those kind of different groups, understanding how this interaction, because also we have different issues, because now they are having other challenges with the money they are receiving. So we have to create that culture also. So to your answer is, yes, we're very concerned, and we are trying our best to understand more what the social environment is doing with the benefits and the problems a project has, no? Because it creates other kind, the people that were harvesting illegally or something that we are putting pressure on that, it creates pressure. So we are trying to understand a little bit more. We are always surprised. But I am very thankful that, and this is something is changing in Mexico, is the activity of the women participating in the ejidos. And we are totally committed that I hope that in the next years we will have majority of women working as inside the comisariados. And that's something we think that will leverage. Today, in one of the biggest ejidos in Mexico, Ejido Pueblo Nuevo, they are two women are the secretary and the treasurer. And this is changing the environment totally. So I totally agree with you. This is a new role that we have to learn. Technicians are great, are very important, and I think that we can't live with those kind of things. But that's right now is the first step. Mm-hmm. Next is the part of listening more.
Exactly. And just to add on to, I believe that's super important. That's something that we try to incorporate into the protocols and the social safeguard requirements, because we know that, not everyone, we require that information is shared in a general assembly, but not everyone maybe is participating in this general assembly. So making sure that that's also reaching the entire community, whether that be women, avecindados, or anyone who might not have been an official a community member, but are also being affected by the project and making sure that they also have that information available to them as well.
Thanks very much. Maybe leading on from this question, sorry, Seamus Murphy, TUPSA, or BBB. So the standards, climate action reserve protocols and BERS, CCB, some of the highest standards of social safeguards, they require grievance mechanisms. And it's often the case that these grievance mechanisms are designed by the project developers and often administered by the project developers. And when there is a grievance that the grievance mechanism itself is misrepresenting their consent or misrepresenting the benefit sharing, then there's clearly a conflict of interest. So I think my question is, in this kind of context of discussion, is the registry, is the reserve considering a kind of third-party oversight of grievance mechanisms in the next protocols? And what might that look like? I think that's the tangible change that we need to see to ensure.
No, I think that's a great question, and that's a great perspective as well. At the reserve, we do have a grievance process on a program level, but I can understand that it would be also important to incorporate that directly into protocols, as you might say, to make sure that there's no bias by incorporating the project developer, making sure that there's a grievance directly coming from the community, that's also heard and that's taken into account, and us as a registry, we were able to identify that. So I really like that idea, and I think that from a verifier perspective, that's something that could also be incorporated in making sure that the verifiers are able to identify those and have something in the protocol backing that as well. Last question? Any last questions? Well, I just want to give a huge thank you to our three panelists, our three expert panelists here. I think this has been a really interesting discussion. And also, thank you to the audience for participating. I know this is the last session of the day, so thanks for sticking with us. And I'd like to give a round of applause to our panelists here.